So something I've provided you as well is a guest list template, and I've given you two copies. There's a printed copy and a digital copy. So essentially this is just somewhere where you can put down all the guests that you intend to invite to your wedding, and then you can track whether or not they have RSVP'd, whether or not you need to follow up with them, etc. But you have that, so once you know who your guests are, you can go ahead, start filling it in. So here is my guest list template, and basically here, the first person, you could say that's number one. You can write their name if you want to. You can write their address, their contact number, and then you can just fill in, did you send an invitation? So that could just be a tick. Have they RSVP'd? If they haven't, you probably leave that blank and wait for them to RSVP. But the point of this template is for you to easily look at it and identify whether this guest has firstly been invited, secondly, have they RSVP'd, and then perhaps after the wedding, you might want to think about sending them a thank you card, so you can also track that as well. Now, this is the paper version. Let's look at the Excel version. So here's the Excel version of the very same template, and as you see, and as you know, I'm always in favor of a digital version because it's easier to update, it's easier to change, it's easier to work with. But you can absolutely use the paper version. You can print out however many pages you need. But in the Excel sheet, as you see, it's very similar. You can put in the name. The category is basically saying, you know, are there the bride or the groom, which side of the family they're from, and then are they adults or children, did you send the invitation, did they RSVP, a thank you card, and then their contact details. Now, if you're doing a digital invitation, you probably just need a phone number because you might just be, you know, sending it on WhatsApp or an SMS or an instant message. Or you might need their email because maybe you can email it to them. And if you're obviously sending a paper invitation, you're going to need their postal address. So this is where you can have all of that information. The next batch of resources we're going to go through is your venue Q&A and your contract checklist. So get those out and let's go through them together. So the venue Q&A is broken up into different sections, and those questions are then coupled under that heading. So the first group of questions we're looking at are your location questions. So question number one, what are the options available for the ceremony, reception, and cocktail hour? So basically you're asking them, what do you have? Like, what are my options? Can I have my ceremony and my reception in the same place? Are they separate places? Perhaps the venue only has a reception area, and so your ceremony has to be somewhere else. It's really good for you to know this up front. You know, what are your options? And if they do host weddings, then they're definitely going to have this information available. Question number two, how many seated guests does each area accommodate, and how many unseated guests does the area accommodate? This is important because you need to know how many guests you're actually going to have, and generally the price is also going to change based on the number of guests and the area that you're actually going to be using. Then the third question, is there a bridal suite or a place for the bride and bridesmaids to get ready? If so, what happens to the luggage once they are done? Can it be moved, and who's responsible? This is really important because say, for example, that you are having your ceremony at this venue, you need to know whether you need to plan to get ready in your accommodation if this venue does not also include accommodation. So if it does include accommodation, then that is wonderful because you can get ready in your room. If it doesn't, then you need to find out if there's a place where you can get ready. Because if you think about this, you're probably going to need to do your hair, your makeup, your retinue is going to need to do their hair and makeup, and it's the same for the groom. So there has to be some space that is allowed for you to get ready, and if there isn't, then you would need to plan for that somewhere else. In terms of your luggage, is if you're staying there and if this place includes accommodation, then perhaps the night before you're not going to be staying in the honeymoon suite or in the room that is allocated to you once you get married. So you'd probably be spending the night somewhere else in another room. And so you have to figure out what happens to your luggage in that interim process. So from the moment that you're getting ready with all of your things in a particular area, will the accommodation help you and take your luggage to the new room and leave it there for, you know, when you're done with your wedding and everything and you guys are going to be using that room? Are they going to move it between, or do you need to find somebody else to do that? That's important when you're actually planning your wedding day timeline and kind of figuring out all the little pieces that have to fit together, because obviously somebody has to have that responsibility. Usually, if you're having your reception and your party, there's probably going to be a time when the venue, for example, is legally bound to stop serving alcohol, or a time when you have to stop making noise, and so they're like, no, 12 o'clock is when you have to be done and everything needs to shut down. And then number 5, what are the exact times that the facility will be available? So in this case, what you're really going after is when you can start when your vendors can start coming in and doing what they need to do. So remember, your facility being available on the day of your wedding is not just when you walk in, right? Your vendors actually need access to that to be able to set it up. So for example, your decor person needs access to be able to set up all the decor. Maybe they would need access even a few times before that to be able to plan the decor as well. So you kind of have to figure out what are the times, when are the days that it is available, when are the days that it's absolutely like not available. If there's perhaps another wedding, there may be days where you're not allowed access to the venue at all. So that is really good to know up front. Obviously the venue will have a specific dates where they already know they're booked, and this may change over time. So this is also something that you would need to follow up as time goes on. And number 6, what decorative items can we use at the venue? Can we move anything? And if there's a holiday season, will any decor be in place? So this is a really good question to ask, because if you're having a separate vendor who's going to do your decor, then it's good to know what you're already getting with the venue so that you don't now go and rent it out from them or try to source something that you're already getting. Ultimately, you don't want to spend money unnecessarily. So if you can get something from the venue which you're already paying for and is included, then why not take advantage of that? Make sure you know it up front, because, and remember, this is the first vendor that I've actually spoken about. This is the number 1 vendor. Even though it's not under the vendor section, this is a service that you're actually buying because somebody is providing the venue to you. And the reason I've put it here before we get into the rest of the vendors is because it affects all of them. So once you have this information now at the very beginning, you're then able to take that information and filter it through when you're actually looking for your vendors. So knowing what you have is super important. And in terms of the holiday decor, this is just to say, you know, if there's a specific time of year like Christmas or something, are they going to have these decorations up, and will it actually be available to you? So can you actually make use of them? Okay, question number 7. Is it a smoking or non-smoking facility? That is quite straightforward. 8, is there a local noise ordinance? That is also important. If you're going to be having a party and you want to, you know, have music, a DJ, dancing, that kind of thing, it's important for you to know if the neighborhood or surrounding area has a restriction on noise. Number 9, is there adequate heating or air conditioning in all areas, i.e. your ceremony, your cocktail, and your reception area? That is also quite straightforward because depending on the season that you're getting married in, you might need to use these. Number 10, if the reception is outdoors, what options are available? Can a tent be installed? When is the earliest that this would be possible? And then remember, you need to ask for a preferred vendors list, okay? This is really important with your venue because everything is at your venue, like your event is there, your reception or your ceremony is going to be at the venue. It's actually really good to look for a preferred vendor list from your venue, because this means that these people, they have experience, they've been to the venue, they know what it looks like, they've done setups before, so it's going to be a lot less work for them to actually come up with a quote for you. And it's also saying, hey, we have experience in this, so you can trust us. It's a little bit more confidence that you're putting in the preferred vendor list, as well as the fact that the venue and those vendors have already worked together before. So you know that they know how to work together. And if the preferred vendor is still on the list, chances are that they've been doing a good job. If not, the venue would have probably taken them off the list. So if you get a list of people that are actually used to this and have been doing it for a while, then when you go to your vendor video and we go through all of those, it's going to be really helpful to you because you already have people that you can easily go to and get a quote from, as opposed to just going in blind and just researching online and finding random people to be your vendors. Okay, number 11. What is the weather contingency for an outdoor wedding? And this does kind of tie in with the point before, because you asked if there can be an outdoor tent installed. But this is asking, the outdoor tent is actually your idea. It's to say, if you wanted that, then is that allowed? But the contingency plan is actually what is the venue's contingency plan. So if something happens, what will they do on your day? So for example, if you have an outdoor wedding and you're all set up outside and it starts to pour and rain, or they can see a couple hours before everybody arrives it's going to start raining, then what will they do? Do they have another venue inside so that they can move everything and then just move it into indoors? Or do they have a tent that they can just easily quickly put up to cover everybody? What contingency is available in case that happens? It's really good to know this because it might help you decide between different locations in the same venue or between different venues. Number 12 is parking available on site, and is there overnight parking? This is obviously quite important, not just for yourself, but also for all of the guests that are going to be attending. Okay, the next category, all the questions related to cost. Number 13, what are the dates you have available? Remember, you are not locking yourself down into one specific date that you want. You want to know what dates the venue has available so that then you can make an informed decision. And then number 14, what are the rental rates for those dates? This is now helping you to make an even better informed decision because you can compare the dates versus the prices and then possibly choose something. If you're flexible, choose something that is actually better value for money. 15, what does the rental rate include and exclude, and what equipment is included? You just want to know, what do I get for what I am paying? 16, do you have a lower off-season rate, and what dates are available for those? This might have been answered in the previous question. 17, do you have lower rates for weekdays? This is really important because some venues will give you the availability going off the norm, and the norm is a weekend wedding. But you might decide that I want to have a weekday wedding, and it might suit you, it might suit the people that you're doing it with, and if that is your decision, then you must specifically ask for those rates because it could surprise you how much cheaper it is to actually get married in a weekday as opposed to a weekend, especially if you're doing it in a high peak season. 18, is a service fee included in the rate? Is cleanup included in the service fee as well? So this is important so you know whether or not you have to plan somebody to actually be there to clean up after your wedding. I've actually heard a lot of podcasts, and it's actually really funny and sad because sometimes people do not ask this question, and then on the morning after the wedding you actually have the bride and groom stuck there trying to now clean up and rope in people to help them clean up because they haven't actually thought about this and they didn't realize that they needed to clean up the venue by a specific time, and usually that is actually before the next day. So that doesn't really leave you a lot of time, and you don't really want to be spending the first day of your marriage cleaning up. So ask the question so you can actually plan properly. Question 19, what are the beverage and liquor fees? 20, can we bring our own liquor? Do you have a corkage fee? This is actually an important question because if you want to bring your own wine, for example, then you want to compare what is the cost of me getting the alcohol directly from the venue if they supply it versus me buying my own alcohol, bringing it in, and then adding in that corkage fee. So you can compare both of those and then make a decision on whichever one is more suitable to you. 21, what additional equipment will we have to rent? 22, what time can vendors arrive to set up, and is there a late charge? So if the vendor actually arrives and, say for example, they are late taking away the things they've installed, then will the venue charge you because they're late? 23, is the venue insured, and are you responsible for event insurance, We've already spoken about this, but this is the question that I said we're covering ourselves by putting it in this Q&A so that you know whether or not the venue is going to provide some kind of insurance to you, or whether they expect you to be insured for any damages or anything that may occur. And 24, do you require us to use your catering, and if so, what are the rates? Now, some venues are going to say to you that you're not allowed to bring in your own caterer. You have to use their on-site kitchen or their catering staff in order to have your wedding. This was the case at my wedding venue. And so this is something you have to know, because then already logically this is going to affect your vendors. When you start looking for your vendors, now you know that you have one less vendor to care about because it's already included in your venue. So you don't have to now go out and source somebody separate to do your catering. And on the flip side of that, if they're actually saying that you're restricted and you have to use their kitchen, then perhaps this is something you're not okay with because you have a particular caterer in mind and you don't want to use their caterers. So then this might help you decide against going with this particular venue. Okay, question 25. What is the cost to reserve the space and what is your payment policy? So essentially here what you're asking them is, what is the deposit? A down payment or a deposit so that you can actually reserve the venue. How much is that? And then the payment policy is saying, what is the distribution of it from now until our wedding? So usually you're going to pay a little bit upfront just to secure the venue, and then there will be payment milestones that you then have to pay on. So it might be 6 months before you have to pay the full amount, or 3 months before you have to pay the full amount, or maybe 25% of the amount over the next few months. I don't know what the payment schedule is. It's different for different people. Sometimes it might be 100% upfront. So you need to actually ask them this question and then think about it in terms of your budget and your planning and your life, and figure out if this is actually something you want to do, and also compare between the different venues to help you make a decision. 26, what is the cancellation and refund policy? Extremely important. If something happens, can you cancel? Will they charge you? Is it 100% forfeited immediately if you cancel? Or, for example, if you cancel within 3 months, do you get 100% back? If you cancel within 2 weeks, does that mean that you owe them 100% of the money? If something happens, like you get sick, or there's an accident, or there's a weather condition that prevents you from traveling, another pandemic, a lockdown, we don't know. But if something like that happens, what is their cancellation policy? What is their refund policy? This is extremely important because it protects you. So you have to get that information. Okay, now final section, the vendor policy. Is there a preferred liquor vendor, and what are the bar options and rates? So again, this is coming back to knowing how you're supposed to behave when it comes to alcohol. And if you're having a reception where you are serving alcohol, it's important to know what the venue's policies are, because you don't want to step outside of that policy, and you also want to make sure that it suits your budget and it suits what you want for your wedding. Is there a preferred vendor list for the venue? This is something we've spoken about. Is there a kitchen facility available for use by the caterer? So if you are not using the venue caterer, then does the venue have some space so that your caterer can use that, either to prepare, to warm up, maybe even to make the food? Is there a space available for that? And then lastly, number 30, is a wedding planner / coordinator required? And does the venue have one which is included in the rate? And be very clear in getting, if the venue does actually have a coordinator, what exactly is that coordinator doing? Because you need to remember that sometimes a venue is going to have a coordinator, but that person is not there for you. That person is actually there for the venue. When we go into the vendor list and we actually look at securing a day off coordinator for yourself, I will speak about this more in detail. But essentially what we're asking here is, does the venue need you? Is it a must for them for you to have somebody that is 100% dedicated to coordinating your wedding? The venue needs somebody to be in contact with throughout your wedding day. You and your husband are not those people, because you're getting married, you're going to have your hair done, your makeup done, etc. So they expect that you would have somebody who's 100% dedicated to your wedding on the day, to getting tasks done, to answering questions, to solving problems. And they might require that you have that person. Or they might have a coordinator that is either dedicated to solely protecting the venue and making sure that they deliver what they need to contractually, or doing both, which is protecting the venue and also helping you coordinate everything so that your wedding day goes well. That's usually not the case. So you just need to make sure that if they have a coordinator, you know what is expected, what is the venue expecting from you, and then what that day of coordinator that they have, what are they doing and who would they be liaising with. So what is the contract checklist? Now, at the end of your tour and possibly your Q&A and your conversation with all these venues, they are then going to produce a contract which you would need to fill in and sign. This contract checklist is for that contract, okay? So before you sign anything, before you give it in, you're gonna come to this and make sure that you've covered all of these points because you want to protect yourself. So let's go through it together. So number one, name and contact information for you and your venue, the date and time frame of your reception or ceremony or everything including accommodation, depends if you're having that. 3, exact names of the specific room or rooms to be used, detailed description of your reception space, the time that the professionals or your other vendors will be able to set up, the number of guests and the number of tables to be set up. 7, an itemized list of what the site will provide, the name of the manager working on your wedding, and the name of any substitute in case that manager is not available, proof of insurance and liquor license, setup, cleanup, overtime, and other fees, total cost, which needs to be itemized, meaning just that the cost needs to be split up into different levels and it shouldn't just be one chunk of money. 12, deposit amount and due date. 13, balance and due dates. 14, your cancellation and refund policy, and anything else that is relevant that was agreed with the venue verbally. You need to make sure that it's specified in the contract. So anything that's not here that has actually been agreed, list it down explicitly so that when you're signing this, you are covered. This brings us to the end of the Q&A. I hope that this was helpful. I know that we went through quite a few things, but again, if you just take it slowly, print it out, go through the questions yourself, make notes on your own, it's really going to be helpful to you. And honestly, the venue is one of the most important things that you can be doing right now. So use this Q&A and also make sure that you use the contract checklist so that when you go out and look for your venue, you are protecting yourself. That's it. I'll see you in the next lesson.